here, lots of people from younger years as well, so really nice for you to come after a long day at school. It is a real, really big debate that we're having. I know it's one that's excited lots of strong views amongst students here. The question is Ched Evans, social justice and moral rule, and we've got two very distinguished speakers on the topic. So we've got Charlie Webster here, who is or was patron of Sheffield United Football Club. She's a sports TV presenter, she's an athlete as well, she's done lots of things, and she has led the campaign against Ched Evans being reinstated to the position that he had before his rape conviction. On the other side we've got Claire Fox, who again has done many things in her time. She has been a teacher, she's been a journalist, she's been an editor, and more recently she has founded the Institute of Ideas, which is an organisation which seeks to promote debate and discussion amongst young people. So she's going to speak on the other side. We're going to do the usual format. Zara's going to start us off, who she's kind of spoken to lots of students. She'll express some of the views that she's heard as well as her own, and then we'll go to Charlie, and then we'll go to Claire, and then we'll open the floor to questions and answers.
So I'm arguing against Ched Evans being allowed to play football professionally again. I understand he served his time and therefore he has been rehabilitated, and according to the laws in this country he should be allowed to be reinstated in whatever job he has been previously having. But there's a list of things that you cannot do after you've been put on the sex offenders register, which include working with children. And I personally think that if you're a footballer that's in the public eye, you are a role model for children, which therefore means you shouldn't really be allowed to be a footballer if there's going to be lots of children looking up to you and thinking that what you did was okay. And I completely think rehabilitation is something that we should use as something to go forward with in society, but he did a really awful thing, and I think that if he continues to be looked at in a positive way, which he will be by young children, depending on whether he wants to be or not. He might not want to be a role model, which is fair enough, but if you're going to be a footballer, then you're going to get lots of people looking up to you and thinking that you've done an awful thing, and then can continue on just acting as if nothing has happened, which something very big has happened. He's affected someone's life forever now. He's not innocent. He's been convicted of rape, which therefore means he is guilty, and I don't think he should be allowed to pay. I can't really do much better. Do you mind if I stand up?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna. How many people do you reckon's in this room, Shabana? 100? 100, yeah. Around 100. Do you mind doing me a favour? Don't worry, I'm not going to embarrass you or do anything weird. Can about 25 of you stand up for me? Oh, thanks. I'm already your friend. So can we have don't worry, I promise you, I will not do anything to embarrass you. I won't get you to put down. So how many do you reckon we've got? I think we need a few more, right? A few, stand up over here. Promise I won't do anything. Promise.
We've got 17 so far.
17, I do need a few more. Come on guys, you're not embarrassed, are you? Alright. Have we got a teacher? You say something?
Yeah,
sorry, that was very particular. Thank you. Alright then, if we just have a little bit quiet, and then we can chat after if that's alright. You can ask me whatever you like after. Hey ladies that have just walked in, do you mind just staying standing? I promise I won't get you to do anything, it's for 30 seconds, okay? Now everybody that's standing, just take a look in the room, and do you think there's quite a few people standing? It's quite a large amount, isn't it? What do you think? People sitting down, can you just take it all in? Do you think it's a decent amount of people that are standing up? A significant amount? Are these people important? Yeah. So, well, that's the, yeah. Somebody take note of who they are. Some might be your friends, you might pass them in the corridor, you might have the same class with them. So, the people that are standing up, who are you? Do you have any idea what I'm doing?
Yeah, you're going to say, in this many people, this amount is racist, something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
What?
Is that shocking? You haven't been raped or sexually abused.
Charlie?
This is statistical, yeah? So 1 in 4
Charlie, he said rapist.
Okay, not rapists. Sorry, I thought you said people that have been raped. No. The amount of people, that are stood up statistically, okay, you're not victims, statistically are victims of sexual abuse. Does that surprise you?
Is that the world? Is that the world or is that the UK?
The UK, in your country, in your city, hey, stand up. You're not getting away with it yet. You can sit down in a second. So, what do you think about that? Can you take that in for just a minute? Do you think that's okay? Because I'm older than you, so you're the next generation. I am quite a bit older than you. So you're the next generation, so this is the kind of life and the world that you're living in. Do you think it's okay?
No.
Right. Thank you very much. So, do you mind asking me a question in just 1 second? Is that alright? Sorry. Is that alright? Or do you mind? Is that okay? Or is it about? Is that alright? I'm just going to carry on and lose my train of thought. So it's 2015, and well, you're all at school, right? So we're really lucky because we get educated, we're rich in culture. We don't really have many barriers, I think, in the UK, apart from the fact that, well, we kind of think it's okay for a convicted rapist to go into football and, well, we can wear his shirt on our backs and we can think, oh, well, let's just cheer him on, and like we can see kids wearing a rapist name on their shirt. Do you think that's okay? No, I don't get it either. So just a few things I want to talk about is when I was at school, it's a long time ago, and probably between 1995 and 1999, I had a series of incidents that happened to me which were sexual abuse that was by my running coach, and it lasted for about 3 years, and it was still the same statistic then as it is now. So why, that was 15, 16, 17 years ago roughly, is it still the same? Because we haven't changed yet. We're changing where we're talking about, I know you've got a feminist group here, right, which is really cool because that didn't exist when I was at school. But we're still arguing whether we think that a rapist can go and be cheered on in a football ground. Now, the victim is still, 3.5 years on now, so he served 2.5 years in prison of a 5-year sentence. Just so you know, I don't know whether you know too much about it, and tell me if I'm repeating myself, but she is still in witness protection, even though she hasn't done anything wrong. But she had a few drinks. So, I'm sure you all have. But that doesn't mean that we should be raped, right? And if you think that boys are not talking to you, I am, because boys can get raped too. That's something we don't really talk about. And it makes you go, oh my god, that is the worst thing ever. It's the same for a girl, right? It's exactly the same. It's no different. And she has had to change her identity 6 times, and her family have been in touch with me, and they are not even allowed to go near her. So she is completely on her own, still. But Ched Evans can go back into football, okay? It kind of doesn't really weigh up to me. So talking about Ched Evans, I was a patron of Sheffield United. I'm from Sheffield. I'm Northern, sorry. Who's Northern?
No,
okay. All right. False hope. So I'm from Sheffield, and I was brought up a similar community to you guys here in Stoke Newington, Sheffield. And I used to go to football all the time. I don't know whether you go to football matches or any kind of sports thing, but I used to sit there with my dad and he used to like, come on, the blades, and all that sort of stuff. And I used to really, really love it. And then they asked me to be the patron of Sheffield United because I worked for about 6 years as one of the main anchors on Sky Sports, and did quite a lot of work in my community. And what I was representing was respect and equality, and making sure that young girls and boys got an equal chance through sport, and we taught those values within sport. Do you believe that sport can teach those things?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And it taught me a lot. Still now, like I think Shabna mentioned, I do loads of running, and I do marathons, and I do Ironman and stuff like that, because it really helps me, and it taught me a lot when I was younger. So football teaches the same things. So I was like, well, how can I be the patron of Sheffield United when they're about to take on a convicted rapist back into the club who they'd helped so he can play football, so the next generation of me, because I was sat there going, could go, young girls and boys can go, hey, come on, Ched Evans, oh my god, he scored a goal, and you raped somebody. Like, to me, I just don't understand how in 2015 that's okay. And not just as somebody who's suffered sexual abuse, but somebody who wants to live in a world where you're all sat down. So I don't have to get 25 of you to stand up. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my argument. I'm going to let Claire speak and then get to ask your question.
Thanks for inviting me, everyone. When Ched Evans was charged with rape in 2012, he was found guilty and sent to prison. He's always claimed that the sex was consensual, but the court found otherwise. And unless and until he has an appeal that's upheld, I consider him to be guilty. So I'm going to treat him as guilty for this debate. He is a rapist. But I want to say before I start that this is an emotive topic. I am not saying that Ched Evans should not have been sent to prison. I am not saying that rape is not a serious crime, or that, even though the 1 in 4 stat is one I would contest, that people who are victims of sexual abuse shouldn't be taken seriously. But nonetheless, I am here to defend Ched Evans' right to play for a football team. And I'm here to defend some important principles. So why should Ched Evans be allowed to resume his career in football? For me, it is indeed a matter of principle, because having served his time for rape, Evans should be allowed to get on with his life and return to work. As Darcy said, this is about rehabilitation, or certainly one of the key things for me, rehabilitation of ex-offenders, which I consider to be the hallmark of a humane and civilised society. President Obama, no less, talking about an NFL quarterback, Michael Vick, who was released from prison for dogfighting, defended his right to resume a football career because he said, "I believe in the idea of redemption, that people should have a second chance, and so do I." I want you to take a step back from Ched Evans for a minute. One of the problems that we often encounter with the prison system is that criminals, when they are let out of prison, can find it very difficult to secure employment when they're released from prison. Many of them become demoralised, find their life pointless, enter a spiral of decline and depression, often associated with not getting a job. Others return to crime. They're listless, they can find nothing else to do with their time. Ched Evans is an exception, one of the lucky few, you might say, because he served his time, but his former employer was prepared to give him another chance, to offer him redemption, as Obama said, and offered him his job back, and he's had other job offers. But now, he is not working as a footballer because of what I consider to be a mob backlash and a worrying backlash. I also want you to remember the concept that offenders can be rehabilitated after serving jail time. That idea that you can be rehabilitated was progress. It was progress from the Dark Ages, a time when people believed then that some people were inherently evil, that you could never ever be reformed. What they used to have in the medieval times was branding. They literally would have thief branded on you, rapist branded on you, murderer branded on you. You'd never get over that, right? One of the signs of progress in modern society was that people who make mistakes, even who break the law, can actually learn from those mistakes. So the criminal justice system allows them to spend time in jail and learn from their mistakes, and then be given a shot at redemption. And the way that you get redemption is by re-engaging with society, moving on, being able to re-engage with your chosen profession. You see, a value principle of a civil society has to be, for me, the rule of law. A court imposed a punishment on Ched Evans. A parole board released him from prison, all through the rule of law. Legally, he's free to return to his previous profession. And I find it scary, actually abhorrent, that those decisions have been treated with contempt by a lot of people on Twitter, signing petitions, and a kind of hysteria that took over society. But I think that we have to be very careful about creating a big fuss where you actually say that somebody should be punished twice. So he's done his time, he's out, he's paid his price, but no, another group of people arbitrarily on Twitter signing a petition could say, no, it's not good enough, suffer again, and more, and more. You see, stand back again and think about what sentencing and the rule of law is all about. We have a nation, a government, that they create laws. Those laws are made by elected politicians who we vote for. That is then constituted through the courts of law. And that was set up as opposed to mob justice or lynch mob justice, where people could just go round and say, I'll take the law into my own hand and get you back. It's a dispassionate judicial system that tries to balance the rights of the individual against those of society as a whole. Now, a lot of people say, what about the victim? My concern is that when you put the victim centre stage, you conflate justice and revenge, potentially. You see, the courtroom is not a place for the victim to receive a sense of closure or emotional relief, or indeed to enact vengeance. But rather it's supposed to be an objective forum where society enacts punishments fitting for crimes. Victims cannot be allowed to just have vengeance, because imagine a situation. A grieving mother finds her child knocked over in the road by somebody driving irresponsibly. If you have lynch mob or mob justice, you simply kill the driver. You, understandably, as the victim, will want to kill whoever has victimised you. That's what you do. But we have to take a step back and go through the courts, because otherwise emotion would rule out. And in other legal systems, actually, we haven't got that judicial system. Rapists are hanged, stoned, and so on, as a recognition for sullying or dirtying the victim. But that's not here, and I'm pleased that it's not. Even, of course, the mob of vigilantes against Ched Evans don't openly argue against rehabilitation, and they often pay lip service to rehabilitation, but they say there's lots of exceptions. They argue that Ched has forfeited his right for a second chance because he's shown no remorse, because he's a professional footballer and a role model, because rape is a special crime, because supporters have harassed the victims. Now, I haven't got time to go through all of these now, but a couple of things. He's shown no remorse is one thing, but Ched Evans did express regret for his act of infidelity, but he actually protests his innocence. Now, it actually is perfectly reasonable for somebody to say, I didn't commit the crime, even if they've been found guilty, because people are sometimes wrongfully convicted, and that's one of the things we have to remember. But I don't think he needs to show the remorse demanded of him by people on Twitter, and that is not the basis on which we give redemption, because that again goes against the role of law. What about the claim that Ched Evans should be a role model because he's idolised by thousands of fans, and he shouldn't be allowed to return to such a high-profile profession? I think it's problematic, because I think that we can't have legal rights for some, but not others. I can't think you can say that some citizens should be treated in one way under the law, but if you happen to be somebody in the public eye or a footballer, you're treated something else. And I don't actually think that footballers should be treated as role models. It seems sort of based on a degraded view of football fans themselves, who are considered to be so susceptible and idiotic and stupid that when their star team player scores a goal and has a rape conviction, that when they cheer, it means that they're cheering for rape. No, they're cheering for the goal. Footballers are not and should not be role models, because their job is to win football matches, to excel at sport. And for me, that's it. They have no other responsibility for the moral education of children or teaching other people's children how to behave. That is not their job. Some people say that there are clear messages being sent out by allowing Ched Evans on the pitch. The person who set up the e-petition says, a clear message is being sent to young boys and men that you will be forgiven for this crime. Women will not be believed when they accuse you of that crime, even if the court believes you. The message is given that men who commit such atrocious crimes will suffer only a small penance, while the women they attack suffer for the rest of their lives. But, I'm not convinced by this, because actually when they say the message is he only suffered a small penance, actually Evans was sent to prison. And I don't think going to prison for years is a small penance. And most of us actually would understand that this is somebody who has suffered for their crime and suffered the consequences of committing a terrible, heinous crime. But what are the other messages we send off by not putting him on the pitch? Do we send out a message then that if you commit a crime, you should live without hope, that you should never be allowed to work again, that once you've served your time and completed your sentence, you should be thrown on the scrap heap, forever vilified, that if campaigners believe the sentence is too short, if campaigners believe the sentence is too short, that's one thing. But I think it's a very dangerous message that Ched Evans should pay because people are worried about rape in general, or sentencing in general. And making a scapegoat out of someone is not a message I want to send. That final bit. Last thing I'll say is this has become a free speech issue. And I do want you, when you have this debate, to remember that, and why I'm saying yes to this debate, that when I've argued this before, I've been accused of rape apologism, thinking that all women should accept their fate, that rape is not a serious crime. I hope when we have this discussion, we can get away from that. Actually, not play the man, but the bull. Actually try and discuss this very seriously. And I'm really delighted that you organised this debate, because it's actually a sensible way of discussing the issue. Thank you very much.
Charlie and Charles, just to come back on a couple of things that Claire said, and then we'll open the floor to questions. So please do get comments and questions ready. Charlie.
And yeah, I agree with Claire at the very end. It's really good to have these debates, and it's really, really important as well. The only thing, just a couple of things I want to pick up on is about the mob rule, because as much as Claire said she's been accused of certain things, so have I, and one of them is mob rule and a lynch mob. And I completely disagree with that, because a mob is, a mob is basically a disorderly group of people. Everything that I've done, I've acted with dignity, and when I've spoken, it's to try and speak up and say that, you know what, in my society, it's not okay to rape. And as much as we can argue that a footballer should get his job back, it's a bigger picture that we should send a message out that if you're going to decide to go and rape somebody, you have to pay a penance for it, and not necessarily 2.5 years, but a mob is basically a disorderly group of people. Now, through our whole lifetime, before we even were born, there was slavery, right? And what happened with slavery? They stood up and went, hang on a sec, no, this is not okay. So, was that a mob rule, or was that change? And then, what about when black people weren't allowed to walk into a school in Alabama, and they weren't allowed to have an education? They stood and went, no, we're not accepting this, this is not okay. Was that mob rule, or was that change? Was it progress? What about when women didn't even have the opportunity to vote? You mentioned the general election and politicians, that's in May. That wasn't a mob rule, or was it a mob rule? That they argued for women to have the vote. But what about when 1 million people protested and marched to say no to war? Was that a mob rule, or was it change? So in my opinion, there is no argument for mob rule. There is an argument for rehabilitation. There's not one for mob rule, because that is how we change, by standing up and saying no. So in your life, do you think, I'm sure there's times where you've signed a petition, or you've said, no, hang on a sec, this is not okay. Has there been, or? Yeah? And you're not mobs, are you?
Okay, all right. I think Claire might want to come back to that, but perhaps we can cover some of those issues in the questions. So who wants to get us started? Okay. Young man over there, do you want to tell us your name? And you've come from a different school, haven't you, as well?
Yeah.
So
I'm Andrew, and I'm from Bridge Academy. I just wanted to ask, sorry, I forgot your name, the lady. Yeah.
This
Yeah,
lady?
yeah. A question kind of directed to you.
Charlie.
Charlie, sorry. If you're like suggesting that Ched Evans shouldn't go back into football because of what he's done in the past, my question is, where do we draw the line as people? Because people like other footballers, such as, I think, Luis Suarez, for an example, racially abused another Patrick Evra. Yeah. So and he's still playing football now, and in fact he's actually doing quite well. So where do we as people draw the line to say, okay, this crime's all right, you can continue playing football? Okay, no, you can't do it. Like, where's the line drawn?
And firstly, it's really sorry, what was your name? amazing point because it's a really important point. And I don't think we as people can decide to draw the line, because I'm a football fan, so I agree Luis Suarez was completely wrong, and a lot of acts within football have been wrong. We've seen a lot of different cases that aren't rape cases, that are race cases. You know, Zinedine Zidane, we've seen like loads of different ones, and the point is, and the point that I try to push for, is who makes the guidelines? Who makes the guidelines in your profession as a teacher? Your governing body. And the governing body of teachers say that a convicted rapist isn't allowed to teach. That's a law. That's not my opinion or us as people deciding. That's law. It's the same with lawyers and doctors and so many different professions. So maybe the FA, or not maybe, the FA should have a rule, a guideline that says if you racially abuse, or if you bite, or if you rape, you are not allowed to go back onto the football pitch and play football and influence young people. And I pushed for the FA, and the FA said, it's a dilemma. And they also said that they don't feel that it was their need to respond or to get involved. Yet their job is the governing body of football for the better of the game. So I agree that we can't draw a line, because I agree with you, and I think there's fantastic campaigns that say kick race out of football. At the moment there's going to be much more work as well that's going to be kick sexism out of football as well, and there's a lot of work on the women's side too. So I think they're all fantastic work, and it's the FA that should come forward and say that. And to the points on social media that Claire said, there's also a lot of abuse within social media that fuels that as well. Does that answer your question? Is that okay? Yeah.
I think Claire wanted to come back on that point as well. So.
Yeah, it is an interesting question, and actually, one thing that's happened with Ched Evans has been to note that actually rape has been treated as a different kind of crime. So just to deal with crime first rather than abusive behaviour and the race issues. So, you've got people like Lee Hughes, who was jailed for causing the death by dangerous driving, but he's gone back to play for Port Vale following his release. And although he's got a lot of stick on the pitch, nobody questioned that. Or you've got Luke McCormick, who was jailed in 2008 for killing 2 young boys whilst he was drunk while he was driving. And he's gone on, since his release, to be appointed captain of Plymouth Argyle Football Club, where he plays as a goalkeeper. And the thing that's then happened is people say, yeah, but rape is different because the consequences of rape are more problematic for the woman who's raped throughout their life. But I just think, actually, losing family members, especially children, would indicate to me that actually, either you're going to say that anyone with a criminal conviction that's ever been in jail shouldn't play football, or you don't make an exception of one particular crime. Now, it is true that there will be professions, like teachers, teaching profession, that has a rule that says anyone who's been involved in a sexual crime should never play for a football team. And it might well be, even though I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, that the FA decides that's the rule. But when you were making the point about mob rule, this is what I'd say is, then what you do is you campaign to the FA to change the rules for what the rules are about what kind of person you need to be a footballer, right? And if you decide that you don't want people who are abusive, either racially abusive or people like this, if you're going to have rules, you say, right, if you do that, you're sacked, that's it. Then that's a set of rules, people know that, right? But that's not the rule at the moment. And my mob rule point is not actually the same as campaigning politically to get rid of slavery or fighting for women's rights. I mean, I've been involved in politics all my adult life to make those changes. But it was the lynch mob I didn't like. The lynch mob were exactly the people who didn't go by the rule of law. And when women wanted to vote, they wanted the legal right to vote. It was not just a question of just lashing out. And so for me, with Ched Evans, he's been scapegoated. And if you want to change the rules for everyone, and then Ched Evans will know, and anyone else who's done for a sexual crime will know they'll never play in football again. But that is not the rules there are now. The rules don't exist now, but because of a kind of atmosphere of witch hunting and hysteria, he has been the one person who's been, no, you're not going to work again. And that's what my nervousness is. And as it happens, I think, let him play football again. Right? That's
I don't think either of us is saying that just because he's raped someone. We're not saying that rape is the one crime that footballers should be, if they've committed that crime, then not gone into football. I don't think that's what either of us are saying. I personally think that if you've caused harm to another human being, that's not setting a good example for anyone, and you shouldn't be allowed to play football. I don't think it's about, oh, he's raped someone, therefore he's done the most awful thing, and that is the one thing that should stop you being able to play football. I don't think that's what it is. And also the mob rule argument, I think people are obviously going to be angry about this. Of course they're going to be angry about this. I don't think that everyone is taking it out on this one man because he's such a horrific human and it's one person. I think it's that football is a bit corrupt anyway, and if you're this man, it's such a public thing, it's such a big case that it's obviously going to be at the surface of everything. And of course you're going to, if people have seen an opportunity to maybe try and change things, then they are going to take that opportunity. I don't think it's mob rule. I think it's a lot of people realising that actually enough is enough. If this man is allowed to play football, that's the final straw. I will sign a petition about it.
I have a question for Claire. You said that after legal action, after they serve their sentence, there should be no further intervention. They should be allowed to integrate within society. But again, where does the line get drawn? Because obviously, if it happened with the Prime Minister or the head of police or someone that's looked at even further in the direction of influencing young people, then where do you draw the line? Because we certainly wouldn't want a Prime Minister who's convicted of rape, but why a footballer who's subjected to a similar crowd, similar audience, then be allowed to participate again?
Well, you mentioned specifically rape, but there might be other instances where people are Prime Ministers after they've been put in prison for a long time and committed a crime. Nelson Mandela comes to mind for a start-off. I mean, you are in a situation whereby, so either you take an example of and say that no one has ever committed a crime can ever enter public office. And with a Prime Minister, by the way, you'd have to vote. So, if it was the case that the public didn't want somebody with a criminal record to be a politician, they wouldn't vote for them if it was known, right? And that's fair enough because we get a vote. In this instance, these are private football clubs, and they are entitled to employ who they want. They can have rules to employ who they want. So what I really objected to was when you got a situation whereby, I can't remember the last club, Oldham, I think, that offered to him a place. The people who ran Oldham Football Club, even after the furore at Sheffield, said, well, we actually believe in rehabilitation. We want to buy this guy, we're going to give him a second chance. Now, on the mob rule thing, what happens then? Right? That's what they wanted. That was their rules. They owned the football club, that's what they wanted. 2 police and crime commissioners came out in an open statement and argued that they shouldn't do it. Nick Clegg came out and said they shouldn't do it. It's not just people on Twitter. And Ed Miliband. And what they said was, if you do this, and they wrote to, these police and criminal commissioners wrote to the people who sponsor that club and said, you should consider withdrawing your sponsorship if the club employs this guy. In other words, they threatened them, right? So you get an atmosphere where even Oldham, who wanted to employ him, couldn't. So I'm saying there will be times, just because I don't think you've got a right to be a footballer if you're a rapist, by the way. I don't think that Sheffield necessarily owed him a job. I'm saying they offered him a job. All hell broke loose, not in Sheffield, and then you get a situation whereby what I think is a calm, mature reflection on the situation was lost. So I would not say that every Prime Minister should never have a criminal record, because sometimes people make terrible, terrible mistakes in their life, and they change, and some crimes, as I was using with the Nelson Mandela thing, is sometimes what was considered a crime once. You don't want to have a rule on that. That's what I'm saying. No, as you know, I didn't say that. No, I didn't. I said either you treat rape, so either rape is an exceptional law, right? If we're talking about all crimes, then I would consider that all crimes I'm saying all crimes. If you want to know what I think about rape, right? And that's what I tried to say at the beginning. I think that rape is a very serious crime, and that any rapist who is found guilty in the court should be put in prison for a long time, as it happens. I agree. It is... What? Do you want me to deal with the remorse point as you've raised it? If, when you have gone into prison, you've served your time, the law does not require that you show remorse. So, just to use a broader example, if you are accused of a crime, go to prison, that's what the law deals with, right? You might say, Ched Evans has shown no remorse, I don't want him anywhere near me. Fine, right? But you cannot have a situation whereby you demand that remorse, just you as a person. I mean, you can demand it as a person, that's your opinion, that's fine. But where society deals with that. But also, say you were innocent. Say, not Ched Evans, say anyone was innocent. Do you think that everyone, like the Guildford for the Birmingham Six, they continued to say that they were innocent for many, many years? And everybody said, you should not have anything to do with them because they've never shown remorse and they're murdering bastards. That's what they used to say. Those Irish scum. They won't show remorse. And then as it happens, they were actually found to have been convicted unsafely. And they were in fact innocent. So you can't have a law that says you have to show remorse, otherwise we're never going to talk to you again and you're never going to work again, because that would be unjust.
Okay, we're going to go to Emily, who's been waiting for a long time. So Emily, can I ask a question?
Hi, I'm Emily. You said that earlier on maybe you said that football sport isn't to be role models for children. That's not their part. But sometimes what you're paid to do, what you end up becoming is very different. They may not be paid to be role models, but they are. And the idea that we can't forget that this guy is it would be on television, it would be idolizing him, and he has only served half a sentence, and also, I don't think that it's right that he should get to be idolized again. Like the kids, they don't, it's just, sorry,
It's a very good point. Just a couple of things. Firstly, I'll answer your question, which is a really good point as well, because Claire, you kind of said about football, you don't think they should be role models, but they are, and also you mentioned about football clubs being private, but they're not, because a football club says it's the heart of a community. Like, what's your local football club? Arsenal, right? And it's part of your community, right? Is it? And it's part of your family. Like, to me, it's part of my family. It's passed down to families and families and families. It's not private. And we do sit and we do idolise footballers. And a couple of people did make a point, and you talked about the role models, that people can differentiate between scoring a goal, and I know you said it, Claire, and them being a rapist. But you know what? Some young people can't, because they are looking at them as role models, as people. They have pictures of them in their room and they wear their shirt on their back. And so much so that on social media, when all the debate happened with Ched Evans, people were saying, you're going to Ched Evans her. What do you think? They were using Ched Evans as a verb to rape. Oh, you're going to get Ched Evans. You're going to get Ched Evans. And so it does influence. We can't deny that. Whether we like it or not, he does have an influence, just like teachers do.
Well, on the Ched Evans, that's being used by a lot of people who disagree with me. And I would say that the reason that's become such a household name is because this has become a media furore. I mean, somebody said this is a big issue, but it wasn't a big issue. He came out of jail, he got offered a job. It wasn't a big issue till it became a big issue. I mean, in that,
rape is a big issue.
No,
raping someone's a big issue.
I hate to mention the fact that I know that rape is a big issue, I've been involved in women's liberation politics for a long time and campaigned on that issue. So what's now happened, by the way, just to note, is because I'm saying something different, I now think rape isn't a big issue. And I'm suggesting that that becomes a kind of moral blackmail to close this debate down. It's not helpful. So anyway, I would say on the Ched Evans question, on the role model question, because I think it's a really good question. You know, it's obviously the case. I do know that celebrities become are treated as role models. But I'm saying we overstate it. I mean, you know, it happens, this debate happens all the time. People will say, Justin Bieber's behaving badly. Now everybody who likes his music, well, if anyone does like his music, everyone's got to go out and behave like that, right? Everybody in the public eye, you know. So every single celebrity's got to behave in a particular way, or everyone will imitate them. I have simply made the point that I think that if we are leaving the moral education of young people to celebrities, this society is in serious trouble. I would not ask them to lead the moral nation in a fit, right? So I also happen to think that young people broadly can make the distinction, right? And you can say, well, some people can't, but broadly speaking, I bet you get it. And that you know what you're cheering for and why you like the music without liking their morals. That's my main point on it.
What we'll do is we'll take a couple of questions at a time. So Neve and the girl behind you, and then I'll go over there.
So my question's directed at Claire, and I just wanted to say that, like, in your introduction, you said so much about, let's take a step back. But don't you think that, like, Ched Evans should take a step back and realise that there's so many people who come out of prison and they find it so hard to get a job, and then there's him who comes and he just gets so many job offers straight away. And I understand that, yeah, people should be given second chances, but why should he be in the public eye? And so many people look at him and think, I've actually paid my penance, I'm really sorry for what I've done, but I can't get a job. Like, don't you think that he'd be able to get any small-time job? Like, I'm sure he would. He's a well-known person. Why should he be going and doing something that, like, so many young children are going to see? And young children might even, they all watch Sky Sports News, they might hear this word rape and like, oh, what's rape? Who's Ched Evans? Like, so I don't think that I think he should take a step back and realise that he's not someone that should be in the public eye and be with
but it's about priorities. You know, that's what they're thinking about is money, football and the media. And, rape becomes the second issue. It's, below that. And why is that? To me, I think more such a, rape is above that. But according to the Football Association, it isn't. And their main concern is getting, a player back on the field. If it was, say, their wife or their sister who had been raped, I think they'd have a very different stance. So,
I'll come back on a few things.
Okay, tell us your name.
Charlie, in 2008, Marlon King got convicted of sexual assault and he was allowed to play for Sheffield United. Why wasn't there an outbreak and why was he allowed to play?
I agree. I don't think he should. And actually, when Marlon King he actually got re-signed on loan, do you remember? I think about a year ago, for a very small period of time. And I was meant to do something with Sheffield United. I was meant to launch something, because last year I did a big challenge where I actually attempted to run to and from 40 football clubs down the country to raise the issue and say, basically, football says no to abuse of all kinds. And I actually called the event and said that I don't want to be part of it, and I didn't want it to be at Sheffield United. And ironically, Sheffield United were the same, and I don't get me wrong, by the way, like, I'm still a Sheffield United fan, I always will be. And they actually supported me, and the same fans that kind of wanted Ched Evans back are the same fans that applauded me on the pitch for the challenge that I did last year, and I ran to the football clubs because Sheffield United was one of the football clubs. But I agree with you, and that's going back to the point of, it's almost like I'm arguing one bit, Claire's arguing one bit, but actually it meets in the middle, because it's like, well, somebody has to make some kind of guidelines then, or do we think that football it's a bit like your money point, or a footballer is going to be just above the law, because that's kind of what it is. And I think there's a fantastic good point down there about, it's similar to what you say about Marlon King, is that actually it's really hard for somebody to get a job, especially if they're on the sex offenders list. And why is it any different for a footballer? Like, because it's so hard if you do a crime which we don't see as maybe as big as rape. It's still so hard to get a job. If you do a driving offence, you make a big mistake and you, I don't know, do something wrong with the driving offence, that driving offence goes on your criminal record, and employers look at that and go, you know what, I'm going to take this instead of that person, because they haven't got anything. So never mind, you know, a rape. But I agree with you about Monaghan. He shouldn't have been allowed to go and play for Sheffield United after he was convicted for a sexual offence. And I think it gets to the point where, we've got so many footballers. Claire mentioned, you know, Luke McCormick, you mentioned Marlon King, there's Joe Barton, there's loads and loads of footballers. We can sit and list loads. So when are we going to stop? So maybe it's the fact that, okay, sorry Ched Evans, but you're the unlucky one where we're going to go no. And say, no, I'm sorry, but maybe you should have decided not to look at your phone and when you were sat at home and go, I've just been texted, I've got a bird. You know what? I'm going to go rape her. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what happened.
We've got several questions. Did you want to come back now?
Why was this one so different to the one previous? Why was the outbreak so different?
Yeah, you can go.
I think he hasn't apologised, and he also doesn't think what he's done was rape. He still maintains that. As you said at the start, we are talking as if he is guilty because that's what he's been found. And I know he's having a retrial, which means he can't actually make a statement of apology at this moment. But he doesn't think he raped her. However, he did. He's been found guilty of it. They have found what he has done as rape, and therefore he should have apologised. That's a big thing. But also, as you made a point, it's happened time and time again that people have raped someone or been convicted of some sort of crime and then gone back into football. And I feel like maybe it's just happened so much that eventually people are going to start making a noise about it, and he's just happened to be the unlucky one that has been in the public eye more than most. I think that's probably.
And I think, just very quickly, I know we've got it, but that was 2008, right? So we should be really proud that it's 2015 and that we are discussing this, because maybe in 2008 we didn't feel that we could come forward and say things like this. In 2015, it is progress that we are talking against it. And maybe like my question to people that maybe disagree with me is, how are we going to stop rape? If we don't go, if you're going to rape, then you are not allowed to go back into these jobs. How are we going to stop it? Because in this whole debate, I don't know how long it's been going, but quite a long time. And when I've spoken about it before, we hardly ever speak about the victim. Hardly ever. And so we're going, he should have a job, which he should have a job. But should he have a job in high profile that was a position of privilege? You know how many people get to be a footballer? A tiny weeny percentage. And he was in a position of privilege, and they should respect that. Like we should all do. I respect my position, you respect yours, you all respect that you're in education, right? And you don't go around doing things in the school because you know you'll get kicked out.
How we're going to stop rape is as we have a criminal legal system that absolutely says if you rape someone, you go to jail. And you might not think it matters, but being deprived of your liberty and going to jail is actually quite a big deal. And so I think, but you know, as I said, I don't think there should be a campaign around football. I mean, somebody was saying, you know, why are the FA not more concerned about rape and they're only interested in money? Well, that's likely to be true. I mean, they're the Football Association. They're not an anti-rape campaigning organisation. Not every organisation. I mean, I don't know, but I assume that this school doesn't spend every day, all day, saying the most important thing that we should discuss at all times over everything else is rape. Let's campaign against rape. And so I don't think they've got a job, right? They're the Football Association. They are interested in money, no shock there. I also do want to say that I actually now want to say, and this is going to really get me no popularity, I do not think that rape is necessarily the worst thing that society faces today, that women face today. It is a brutal, nasty crime, and I don't need lectures on that. I can assure you, no. But I do not think it is the most important thing always, and that if you say rape, that's the end of that. And I was trying to say before, I think that the rehabilitation of prisoners is also very important. A sense of justice is important. I am absolutely obsessively worried about why those 3 girls have gone to fight in Syria. I'm concerned about all sorts of big social issues in the world, wars going on, people starving, all sorts of big political issues. I do not think that young women, old women, middle-aged women, should only think that the major crime facing them or the major problem facing society is rape. And I think that actually women, if I can say to you women, we do ourselves a disservice if we do that. I'll tell you something. You can be raped and you can get over it and you can live your life again.
I just need to spit. I feel like it's not making it worse to say that victim feels like rape about rape.
I think we agree as part of this that we respect all of the panelists and the opinions expressed, okay?
No, they don't have to respect me.
So
I'll let you off.
you need to listen. So Charlie, and then there are so many hands up for questions. Okay, so Charlie.
No, it's just, I'm just going to say that there are many issues in the world, and football deals with a lot of amazing issues, and so does sport, because sport has an incredible power. There's a fantastic campaign called Kick Racism Out of Football, which we all know, and it does challenge society, and it does influence society, but I actually can't believe what you said, but rape, what? I think, rape.
This is a well-trodden feminist, there are a lot of feminists who've said this over the years, but I'm not the only one.
I just would like to say that for different people that are raped, it is a different kind of feeling, okay? Some victims can get over it, some victims can't. But it's not for us to sit here and say how a victim feels. It's really not.
Okay, I'm going to go to the young lady there. What's your name?
Charlie. I'm slightly concerned by the way that you're constantly defending the legal system as the holy grail as what's good and what's wrong. Because personally, my mother's a lawyer, and the system is really, really corrupt. More corrupt than we are led to believe. And cases of rape are one of the cases that gets rejected by the court the most because it's belittled, because it's just women fighting for their rights. And I think that you saying that that people are social justice and mob rule is actually just belittling the people who realise that the only way that you can actually make a change is through standing up and getting your voice heard. And I also think that the way that you are saying that there are bigger issues for women is actually playing pop trumps with the idea that a lot of people are oppressed. There are a lot of issues in society today. We are not trying to outrank each other in terms of what's a big issue. We're all trying to solve all of these issues. There's a lot, and it's going to take a lot of effort, and that's why we should put it in, and that's why I said this is wrong, because we need our voices heard, and they're not being heard.
And people are scared to report rape because of what things that you just said. They belittle it and make people feel ashamed. And you're talking a lot about rehabilitation and not prevention. And unfortunately, consent and control is not on the curriculum, and it needs to be, so we can teach people what rape is all about, not deal with rehabilitating rapists.
I was just wondering if doesn't become a footballer, which she hasn't now, I just wonder what other job he would do, because, for example, if he becomes a plumber or electrician, I don't think many people would fancy him coming round to their house to fix their pipes or their it's quite all right saying, unless, and then saying, oh, yeah, well, he shouldn't be doing that job. Even working in a factory or wherever, There's going to be people who don't like him working there. And then the argument becomes, well, do you just let him go on the dole, do you just let him earn no money? And it's crap. I completely agree that really we shouldn't be idolising him at all in any slightest. But isn't that really the responsibility of the fans that go there to the football match, not to idolise him?
Do you want me to comment? No, I agree, but that's why we're talking about it. Like that I agree, like we shouldn't, and it is up to the fans, but that's why we're all discussing it, so that it is up to the fans. And when it comes to a job and money, like, you made a great point, you made your own point, as in, not many people would want him coming around to fix their taps or whatever. But he can do lots of jobs, and I think the great point about footballers is, I remember somebody saying to me on this morning, oh, what else can he do, what else can he do? This is his trade, he's been playing it since he was a kid, but, you know, loads of people change jobs, and footballers, what's the average age? 32, 33, 34? When they retire? Roughly about that, isn't it? So then what do they do after? So they all have to find something else to do. And their career is short-lived, and when it comes to Ched Evans, he can go and find another job. It doesn't have to be playing on a football field.
Okay, Serena, Gloria, then we'll move over to you, I promise. There's their hand been up. Go on, Serena.
Bullying, traumatic experience as cancer, but do we say that once that's happened to you, you should be like that forever, and that humans cannot get over it? So even though you've been raped, and that's a terrible thing, and I know somebody very close to you has been raped, and they're now living a wonderful life, married to a wonderful person, this is what they cannot overcome that. So I think I understand what Scott was saying, and also Michael Jackson was allegedly a paedophile, but this, we don't know if he was actually a paedophile, but this did not stop him from being a musician, and this did not stop him from making music, and he's, called the king of pop or whatever, so other different people. I think it goes back to the where do we draw the line question, where do we say, once you've done that, are you going to be that forever? Can you not ever go back to being what? Because we're not perfect, and humans make mistakes, and obviously, if you rate somebody, that's awful. I'm not going to say rating them a bad thing, but
you must have experienced loads of people being made examples of, and if you don't make an example of somebody, how will people ever know that this is a serious matter? How will people ever actually take the law seriously if it isn't shown to them that it needs to be taken seriously? And like, things will happen. A lot of people just brush it off, and loopholes will be created.
I refer to the point made by the teacher, which is that you can say Ched Evans should not be a footballer, but is it all right for Ched Evans to be a plumber or somebody who works in an office or or are we saying Ched Evans or anyone who's been a rapist should never work again? And I am suggesting to you that rape is a crime like many crimes. I am suggesting it's a serious crime like many crimes. Like some people, stab people when they're younger. I've had friends who've gone to prison for things that they did when they were young. Terrible, terrible things, by the way. And make terrible mistakes. And I've always fought and argued that those people, when they come out of prison, should not be treated as though they're branded as we had before the rule of law. Despite what somebody said about the law being corrupt, I agree that the law is not a perfect vehicle. But I would not want to live without the rule of law. I would not want to live in a society that had not a rule of law that said we'll stone a woman because she's been raped, or there's no courts, or you can't appeal, or you don't have lawyers, or the state can just round you up. They're totalitarian regimes. I don't like them. So the law has been a protection against the state being able to lock you up because somebody says you did a crime, because a victim says that this happened to them. You have to be able to say, but I defend myself, I didn't do it. That's what the law is. So I prefer that, and therefore on the rehabilitation point, as far as I'm concerned, people should be given a second chance. I make no apology for saying that. I don't think rape is an exceptional crime to other crimes, and we should fight very, very hard to defend second chances in life. I know you're young, but let me tell you, life is full of mistakes that you're about to make, as we all have. And at some point, you might just want someone to say, you screwed up, it's all right, wipe the slate clean, you can start again. I don't want to live in a society that never lets you make a mistake and get over it. I want to be able to get over it and change. And I hope that's the kind of society.
So Chris, you've got the floor.
Yeah, basically, I want to make a point that you're saying he should not be able to, obviously he's an idol, so people look up to him, etc. You're saying he should not be able to no longer be playing football, stuff like this, but what about when he has a kid, or if he has a kid? Is that kid going to be taken away from him? Can he look after his kid? Because at the end of the day, my dad is my idol as well in a way, because I look up to my dad, because obviously he is my idol. What do you think should be done then? Because obviously his dad's going to, the kid's going to idolize his dad, but then you lot are basically saying the kid's going to idolize a rapist, but what, this goes out to Darcy as well. What she's saying is that it's basically an eye for an eye. If that woman suffers, then you're going to make the guy suffer as much. But at the end of the day, the woman is getting help. She's getting help to come back into society. But from where you lot are coming from, the guy that has raped the woman, he's getting no help. At the end of the day, like Mr. Ronsby said himself as well, what's he going to do if he doesn't play football? Because if you lot are going to do that to him, he's just going to suffer as much as she is at the end of the day. It's going to make no difference whatsoever. If you want to go beyond something and breach a barrier, then you have to help on both sides.
It's really cool that you idolise your dad. You're very lucky that you've got a dad that you can idolise, and I hope you become dad one day. And I think it's just interesting. It is interesting what you said, and it's a great point to make. But a few times you said, why should he have to suffer as much as the victim? Don't forget, when we're talking